Our next session, moving along the value chain, the supply chain, it's really now looking more at the use spaces and the use applications here. So we'll have remarks around transportation and power generation from three speakers: Nakul Prasad from Siemens, Richie Sakai from Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, and Ed Young from Toyota. So without further ado, if we move to the next slide, Nakul, I invite you to present your remarks.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me, Varun?
Yes.
Wonderful. So first of all, thanks a lot for the invitation. It's been a great panel so far. I start my days very early because I'm in California and we're a German company. So I got all my work done early morning. So I had the luxury actually to sit through all the sessions, and it's been so far very, very enlightening. So thanks a lot for that. And I'm a corporate strategy manager at Siemens Energy. And what I want to do in the next 5 minutes is give a bit of a perspective from the power generation sector. So as you're aware, maybe or maybe not, Siemens Energy has spun off from our big mother company, Siemens AG. That happened last year in October. So we are now a publicly listed standalone energy company with revenues of about $30 billion a year. So this company now is focused on energy, is focused on covering the energy value chain. And like many typical energy companies, we have a generation business. In our case, it's dominated by products related to gas turbines, so either combined cycle or in simple cycle. We have an industrial application sections, which is focused mainly on oil and gas. And we have the conventional transmission business as well, which is a large pillar of the company. And we also have our joint venture with Gamesa and providing offshore and onshore wind. And recently we created a new energy business, which is focused on hydrogen. So that's where it's starting to get interesting now in terms of hydrogen, because hydrogen is really a unique property in bridging present and future energy systems. And that's why it's also extremely important for us. So on the generation side, for instance, hydrogen is nothing new. It's been around mainly in the industrial space in form of syngases. So we've been burning hydrogen in gas turbines for a while now. In fact, the fleet has accumulated more than 50 million operating hours. And we have a roadmap in place to develop a fleet across the portfolio up to 2030. And in fact, in December now, we were successful in a couple of DOE grants as well, one of them in collaboration with Duke Energy and with Clemson University. So that grant is aimed at retrofitting an existing gas turbine by 2023, I believe, to run on 100%. So hydrogen here plays an important role also in extending lifetime of existing assets. So converting a gas turbine to run on hydrogen is a reasonably straightforward approach. I mean, there is some R&D required, but considering that there are thousands of 10,000s really, in fact, of gas turbines running worldwide, these can be decarbonized using hydrogen. On the industrial application side, we have a compressor portfolio, and that's also been sort of in collaboration with some of the participants here in the meeting as well, some of the companies. And that's also nothing new as such. So we already have more than 2 million horsepower of installed capacity in terms of compression. And I mentioned the new energy business, and this new energy business is focused on developing electrolyzer. So we focus on the so-called proton exchange membrane technology. And in fact, our fleet has gathered more than 130,000 operating hours already. And we are striving to develop a portfolio towards 1 gigawatt by the end of this decade. If we go to the next slide, please. So just a glimpse, I know this was originally supposed to be in the production session, so I got shifted, so that's why I included this slide. But nevertheless, just to give an overall perspective of what our electrolyzer portfolio is, because a lot of people still don't associate Siemens maybe with hydrogen as such. So Siemens started the electrolyzer business in 2011 at a lab scale, and quickly we scaled up in 2015 to over 1 megawatt. And our latest generation, so-called Silyzer 300 electrolyzer, is in the 17.5 roughly megawatt range. So for reference, this electrolyzer can produce about 340 kilograms an hour. So it's a substantial size already. But being a large energy company and having renewables and grid integration in mind, the early ambition was to scale up our portfolio towards 1 gigawatt. And that's also very crucial. I think we heard it from previous speakers. When we talk about cost reduction, we also need to consider scale. So that's why we have a roadmap in place now. Our next generation is under development, hopefully soon reaching 100 megawatt and then beyond by the end of the decade, we are striving to reach the gigawatt limit. Next slide, please. Now, as I've sort of shown before, we as a company, we're kind of scattered around the entire value chain in terms of hydrogen. And thus, we are also now in a position to be a full turnkey provider in terms of hydrogen solutions. So that really starts from the planning consulting phase. And that's really transferring the existing capacities we build up and competencies we build up in project execution when we talk about large combined cycle power plants, for instance. As I mentioned, we have the renewable power, which is crucial in a green hydrogen value chain. So that's also in our portfolio. And we're able to integrate partnering solutions such as solar systems, which we don't have in our own component portfolio. Further down, we have the grid integration as seen, the electrolysis as a core technology, as well as the rotating equipment to help out with further treatment of the hydrogen, be it storage, but also the conversion into synthesis fuels with the help of CO2 capture or in form of ammonia when we talk about air separation to produce nitrogen. And if we go to the next slide, and that's going to be my final slide. So I don't have anything Texas specific, but I think all the speakers before me did a great job talking about the situation in Texas. But I would like to provide an example, a very recent example, which could be maybe an inspiration for Texas as well. So this project was announced just a couple of weeks ago. It's called Haraoni, and the links are provided here. But the gist of this project is to produce hydrogen where it is cheap with renewables. And that happens to be, in this case, in Chile. So South Chile, there's a high availability of wind, high capacity factors. So that drives down LCOE costs to about 2 cents per kilowatt hour. It's then converted into hydrogen, further converted into methanol, and shipped into Europe, where our partner Porsche in this whole project is going to use it for their transportation fuels and so on. So this is going to be a large-scale supply chain. It's going to start with 130,000 liters of fuel per year in 2022. And in the second phase, we're going to reach up to 500 million and beyond liters of e-fuel. So that's really a good example of how to transport renewable energy from a region which is very favorable into regions where the demand is very high. And I think this could be applicable. This is not only focused on green hydrogen, this could be applicable to blue hydrogen as well. So again, taking Texas, a very good example of both renewable, cheap renewables, as well as cheap natural gases. So you have these multiple avenues, and now looking to transport this energy into the regions where the demand for renewable energy or for zero carbon fuels is very high. And with this last, if you go to the next slide, I'm actually done with my presentation. Would like to thank you and would like to stay in touch with you if you have any questions or whatever. Reach out to me via email or LinkedIn.
Great, thank you so much, Nakul. Moving on, next we have Ricky Sakai from Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, and I believe Ricky will be making his remarks over phone, but we do have the slides, so we'll move them forward. Ricky, over to you.
Great, thank you very much for having me today for this exciting roundtable. Again, I'm Ricky Sakai, Vice President of Mitsubishi Heavy Industry America. I'm leading our decarbonization business development here in US, headquartered Houston, Texas. So MHI Mitsubishi Heavy Industry is a technology and solution focused conglomerate originally from Japan in engineering and manufacturing across industries like energy, power, oil and gas, transportation, aerospace, all over the world. So we have been decarbonizing many industries by offering high efficient machinery and also renewable technologies over decades. But hydrogen related technologies and solutions have been developed for many years because Japan is a country, nation who has been focused hydrogen. But recently we see a lot of momentum in the industries and we also focused. So our group has been conducting research and development and offering technologies which will enable a hydrogen value chain all the way from production, transportation to utilization of hydrogen. So for production side, we have gasification, also renewable turbines, But also transportation side, we have a compressor of the hydrogen and also pumps. Then other long duration transportation, we have a shipbuilding department who can carry a ammonia, the carrier of the hydrogen. And also we have been building many ammonia plants as EPC provider. And also downstream side, we have other technologies all the way from hydrogen gas turbine, solid oxide fuel cell, and also we are currently developing hydrogen gas engines and also direct reduction technologies by using hydrogen for steel making process. So these are new technologies which will consume hydrogen. And in addition to that, we are consuming a lot of liquid hydrogen for the fuel of the H2A, H3 rockets because we are launching rockets. But not only the existing technologies and solution, but also we are expanding this value chain by partnering with startups and many companies and the industries. So now we will be the solution provider of the hydrogen value chain and also all colors of hydrogen all the way from green, blue, turquoise by using methane pyrolysis and also pink hydrogen by using nuclear. So that's our strategy of the hydrogen value chain as a Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. Can you go to next slide? All right. Yeah, among those solutions across the hydrogen value chain, today's session is focusing power generation and production. I'm going to introduce the power generation solutions we offer. And this slide shows a hydrogen gas turbine. So Mitsubishi Power, which is a 100% subsidiary of Mitsubishi Heavy Industry, has hydrogen gas turbine, which are characterized by ability to reduce investment costs by converting existing power generation facilities that use a conventional natural gas-fired gas turbine to hydrogen burning with minimal modification. And in addition to that, hydrogen can be used in the large capacity gas turbine, which our group has been good at. That's stimulating large-scale hydrogen demand ranged all the way from 40 megawatt to 400 megawatt scale by heavy-duty gas turbine. So we have already achieved 30% hydrogen co-firing in large-scale, advanced gas turbine in 2018, and proceeding with technological development in preparation for 2025 100% firing. And in addition to gas turbine, there is also a fuel cell battery, which are highly efficient and can be used for multiple purposes, such as hydrogen, natural gas, and biogas. So we have built up a track record basically in Japan, but recently expanding orders outside Japan. So as for fuel cell, it could be applicable for technology to solid oxide EC, electrical, and which can produce hydrogen as well. And can you go to next slide?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and we have been actively developing and announcing a flagship but actual or utility scale products in United States, Europe, and the Asian Pacific. So especially in United States, yes, the hydrogen H2 at scale project in Texas, we are providing the renewable power on the operational data from the wind turbine, which in West Texas, which we operate and own and operate. So we are working with Frontier Energy and also UT Austin to evaluate the feasibility of the green hydrogen here in Texas. In addition to that, in state of Utah, we are developing our business that aims to produce and store grid-scale hydrogen for use as fuel in the hydrogen gas turbine supplied by our Mitsubishi Power power group by collaborating with Magnum America, who is storing gas hydrogen for Solton cabin. So Intermountain Power Agency gave us order the advanced class gas turbine, the utility scale project, and it shows the path to 100% renewable power no later than 2045. So this transition will start in 2025 using a mix of 30% hydrogen and the 70% natural gas fuel. So this fuel mixture will reduce CO2 emissions by more than 75% compared to retiring coal-fired technologies. So this is huge. And between 2025 to 2045, the hydrogen capability will be systematically increased to 100% renewable hydrogen, which will enable carbon-free utility scale power generation. So again, MHI is envisioning to be a solution provider for all colors of hydrogen, so by working together with academia and the industrial players and the developing actual projects. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much, Ricky. Next up is Ed Young from Toyota. Ed, can we move to the next slide to get Ed started? We will wait for Ed to join in, and while we wait, we are actually pretty close to the close of the session anyway, but if Ed can join, we'll get his remarks. But I do have some questions both for Ricky as well as for Nakul, and these are kind of similar, but let me begin by asking a question first to Nakul. It was really fascinating, Nakul, as you showed Silyzer generations and the scale, right? You mentioned every 4 or 5 years, like 10 times increase in scale. In research, I study intergenerational technology learning curves, and how do you go from here to there in terms of scale. What are those challenges and management opportunities you see within Siemens to really make sure as you scale up? Are we talking about really just taking what you have and making it bigger, which I don't think is the case? Right, we have a lot of history in in other technologies in the history where as you scale up, and especially as you scale up rapidly, and if there's not enough learning between generations of technologies, later on you run into all sorts of complexity. So tell us, how do you all think about that, and what types of operations and management opportunities and challenges that poses?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So, I mean, what I would say is in terms of scaling, when I talk about scaling, I'm talking about the stack size 6 scaling. So, of course, you can modularize what we have currently. So you can take a close to 20 megawatt unit and have like multiples of them to serve larger projects. So that's possible, of course, but it's not the most optimum way. So we're looking here in order to really get the cost reductions and also get the footprint reductions to scale.
Hey, this is Ed Young. Can you guys hear me?
Ed, yes, we can hear you. So I'll call on you once we have had Nakul's response. Thank you for joining us, Ed. Hang on for a second.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I had some technical difficulties.
No problem, thank you.
So yeah, I mean, obviously there's a typical R&D challenges, which you pointed out, but I think on the other side, there's also the market challenge. So where is the demand now driving these kind of scale sizes? We talked about it, previous speakers were also talking about this. How do we deploy these large projects? At the moment, hydrogen projects are still at smaller scales. So how do we get this quick learning in terms of getting these large projects together? And I think that is one of the key challenges which needs to be addressed by policies. We need to see some sort of incentivization. It's a bit of a conundrum right now. So the supplier doesn't supply because the demand is not there. The demand doesn't really happen because there's supply insecurity. So these kind of problems, I think, for larger scales need to be developed. But I think we're seeing these things happening now. We're talking about scale. The Haroni project I mentioned, that is at a reasonable scale. We've seen announcements from other companies like, I think it was Air Products in Saudi Arabia with this NEOM project, developing hydrogen at large scale. So I think once this demand side kicks off, I think that'll help also on the supply side, scaling our product line more efficiently.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Nakul. We are certainly eating into our break time, but we will go ahead and request Ed to present his remarks. Ed, you do have a number of slides and we are over our session time. So if you could move through them quickly, that'll be great. Over to you, Ed.
Okay, so on slide 2, as we know, carbon pollution reduction need is severe, growing, and global solutions must scale across fleets, facilities, fuels, and regions. So we are seeing that municipalities, states, cities, and governments are now moving fairly quickly to either clamp down on carbon from transportation or just completely go to a regime where we are moving towards zero emission. California, Governor Newsom, about a month and a half, 2 months ago, announced that we'd like to move the state towards eliminating internal combustion engine powered vehicles in favor of zero emission vehicles. And we know that in the United States, a number of the northeastern states and other states that have signed up for the zero emission vehicle mandate are going to most likely adopt those regulations. So next slide, moving to slide number 3. I'm going to skip number 3, just given the time constraints. Moving to slide number 4. So in slide number 4, this essentially is our vehicle electrification plan. And we are taking a portfolio approach where we, given our understanding of consumers and their various needs, we are taking a portfolio approach that will include battery electric vehicles, hybrid electric vehicles, and fuel cell electric vehicles. This is our vehicle electrification plan. And we are taking a portfolio approach where we, given our understanding. And moving to the next slide.
Yeah.
One of the more interesting things about our powertrain is that really the fuel cell electric vehicles, we've sold over 6,000 fuel cell electric vehicles in California. There are now 43 hydrogen fueling stations up and running. In 2021, we anticipate another 15 to 20 stations to come online just in 2021. And then in many more coming online in 2022 and through the mid-decade. Now the backbone, actually moving to the next slide. This year, we're actually right around now, we are about to launch the next generation Mirai, and the new Mirai is coming. I think literally these vehicles are being taken off the ships at the port of Los Angeles, and will be hitting dealers soon. So the car will have better power, performance, efficiency. The car currently has been rated by the EPA just over 400 miles of range, and has much improved dynamics and style relative to the current vehicle. So next slide. What is really the underpinning of the powertrain is all of our experience building hybrid electric vehicles. So all the learnings from the Prius, where the Prius is essentially an internal combustion engine vehicle with battery support, we've taken those learnings and essentially built that into the fuel cell electric vehicle, where you take a fuel cell electric powertrain, and it's also it's essentially a hybrid vehicle that also has a moderately sized battery in it to help help propel the vehicle. So because of that, the scale of the vehicle itself is extremely scalable. And what we've essentially shown is that we took 2 Mirai fuel cell powertrains and went out and purchased a Kenworth mule and installed the powertrain into that truck along with heavier duty motors, larger capacity, hydrogen tanks, and voila, we ended up with a Class 8 truck that has capable of 670 horses and 1,325 pound-feet of torque. So next slide. So this next slide essentially shows the results of those trucks. The blue truck is the Alpha truck. That's the first truck that we built out. And the red truck is the Beta truck. And is the second truck, and with that and all of the Kaizen improvements that we were able to learn from the construction of the blue truck, we applied to the build of the red truck. We made the red truck a lot lighter. We installed larger capacity hydrogen tanks, and that's enabled the vehicle to go from 200 miles, which is the alpha truck, to 300 miles, which is the beta truck. And with that, we also were able to work with the Port of Los Angeles and Kenworth and UPS and Shell and others to win a grant from CEC for the creation of 10 Class 8 fuel cell electric trucks, and also 2 heavy-duty fueling stations in the Los Angeles basin. So next slide is essentially a more graphics relative to that Zanzief heavy-duty project. And next slide also shows additional applications of fuel cell electric systems that can be applied in port situations. So I think fuel cell electric powertrains are very applicable for situations where you have extremely high power requirements, and the vehicles that operate cannot be down for long periods of time. So given the fast fueling nature of hydrogen and fuel cell, these work vehicles are able to operate on 3 shifts, and they're able to be fueled quickly, and you can tune them to very, very high power environments. And those are my slides. So I apologize for the technical glitches, but hopefully people are able to follow along.
Great. Thank you so much, Ed. We're glad that we were able to get your comments. In the interest of time, I'll pose a very quick question to Ricky if you're still online. Ricky, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so the question I really found very interesting when you mentioned that currently you have a 30% hydrogen turbine, and within 5 years you're looking to go to 100%. Is it a linear path for you? Are some fundamental changes required to do that? Sounds like you all are very confident about the pathway, but certainly looks very potentially very dramatic. So what's entailed going from 30% to 100% hydrogen combustion?
Sure. Yeah, it is a linear development, definitely, because we have been accumulating operational hours of the rich hydrogen gas piling for over decades by using the coal gasification, IGCC, and other applications. So it is going very well, and we are very confident to achieve 100% in next couple of years.